In this video, we're going to be looking at the idea of a project. So working out what a project is and how it's different from things that an organisation might normally be doing. In this table, you can see the differences between routine work and projects. So this would really help us understand what the characteristics of routine work are. So these are things that are ongoing, they're part of established job roles, and they contribute towards providing products or services that your organisation produces on an ongoing basis. So this is the business as usual, the standard things that are happening and the standard established job roles that an organisation has. They're managed through line managers, and they also continue indefinitely into the future. So for the length of the time that the organisation is running, those job roles and that routine work will be there. On the other hand, projects are one-off undertakings. They're designed to meet very specific objectives, so set up as a time-limited thing. They've got a predetermined start and end, and they're going to meet very specific aims. So they're things that provide products or services that are tailored towards maybe a specific client or a community or a sponsor or a pot of funding, things that are very particular, so one small element of what an organisation does. Also, they're usually managed by a project team with a project team leader. So how is a project different? Really, these are the kind of key things. So usually working on a project is a temporary role. Often you'll be working with different colleagues and different team leader than you would normally have. It gives you opportunities to help to decide how to achieve the objectives. So the project is being worked out from scratch rather than using established methods and established things that the organisation already does. This can also mean that people are less certain about the processes and the activities involved, so it allows for new things to happen. When you're starting to work on a project, the very most important thing to begin with is agreeing the purpose and the aims of that project. So you need to set priorities. You need to work out how you're going to meet the needs of the sponsors and the stakeholders involved. You need to identify what the risks are of not meeting those needs, so not fulfilling the aims of the project. And you also need to work out whether the project should go ahead. So this whole planning stage allows you it allows you to spend a small amount of time, but prevents you from spending a huge amount of time and resources on something that might not work. When you're thinking about who is involved, so we talked about this idea of stakeholders. So these are all of the people who are involved in delivering the project. They're people who will benefit from the project. They might be an audience that the project is trying to attract, and they might also include those who are carrying out the project and who are funding the project. That goes alongside this idea of sponsors. So sponsors are the people who are going to take responsibility for delivering the project, and also the people who are going to take financial responsibility. So wherever the income is coming from. That's how we often think about as sponsors. And when you're working out your aims and objectives, you need to work out the objectives of both sets of people, so the stakeholders and the sponsors, and make sure that they're working towards the same goal. The next thing to do is to agree the scope of the project. So this allows you to be really realistic about how to budget and resource for the activities that are going to be going on. It also allows you to check that the budget and the resources that you've got or that you're in the process of securing are adequate to meet the objectives. So will you actually be able to achieve the project on the income that you've secured? It allows you to avoid the project creeping into other areas that weren't agreed at the outset. And it helps you to work out what the deliverables are, so what the outcomes of the project are, and enabling you to budget those so that they will be on time and on cost. These things are really important when you're working out a project. So in an example like hosting an exhibition, when we're talking about this idea of deliverables or outcomes, when you're starting to work out on a project, you'd need to work out all of the steps, all of the things that are involved, and all of the outcomes that there are going to be. So with an exhibition, you might have the artwork shown in a particular venue. You might also have workshops that run alongside that, and maybe an open day or a special event that goes on. With the workshops, your deliverables or the outcomes of the project might be split up into different sets of activity. And during something like an open day, you may also have things like talks or people presenting about the work. The next thing to do when you're planning a project is to agree the timescale for that project. So firstly, this needs to satisfy the sponsor's needs. So those people who are taking responsibility for the project in terms of managing it and championing it, but also in terms of funding it. Agreeing a timescale also allows you to really accurately plan your resources. So what you're going to need when and how those things will be found and allocated. It allows your progress to be monitored against project milestones. So when we're thinking about that SMART system framework of working through a project, you're going to need milestones. You're going to need those timed elements in your project so that you know whether you're on track. It allows you to secure the most important deliverables, so these most important outcomes of your project, at the earliest possible stage. So by working out what the make or break elements of your project are, you can make sure that you focus on and prioritise being able to deliver those at the earliest stage in the planning. Also, the timescale allows you to ensure that these priorities are clear to everyone who's involved and that they know what to expect over the coming months or years. This diagram here is a Gantt chart, which you might often see in project planning. And this is a way to work out the timescale for the project, to visualise what the different jobs are that need to be done, and also in what order those will happen. So at times you'll need to complete certain jobs before you can go on to complete others. And you can see that that's what's happening in this diagram here. The next stage will be to agree on the budget and the resources needed to fulfill the project. So you will have already been working out what resources are needed. So working through your objectives, working through your timescale, these will already give you clues as to what you're going to need to fulfill the project. It allows you to check whether it's possible, again, to meet the objectives that you've set within the budget. And this might be a process of reorganising those objectives or working out which are the most important if funds are limited or if your budget is tight. Helps you to work out what purchases are allowed, so you can be very clear with everybody working on the project about how the money will be spent and how the different resources will be allocated, what things people can buy and when that can happen. It'll help you work out the amount of income that you need. So when you're trying to gather that income, either through fundraising or securing different funding or getting people to pay for different parts of the project, it'll allow you to find out what the total amount is that you need to make it successful. Working on a clear budget will also allow you to work out when that money is going to get spent and how the budget will be managed and administrated. So who is going to be in charge of that budget and who's making those decisions, how are payments made, all of those logistical details. When you're working out your budget and your resources, there are a number of different areas that it's important to consider. The first of these are the people. So what skills and experience do you need? How many people do you need? When do you need them? And what do you need them to do? So really working out from the set of tasks that you've got and the timescale that you've given yourselves, working out what you'll need to achieve that in terms of people, in terms of human resources. Also the physical resources that you'll need. So these might be things like venue or transport or equipment. They might be materials. There could be lots of different physical elements to the project. You'll be working out what money you need. So how much money you'll require. Does it need to be cash or could it be in-kind support? When you'll need that and how it will get paid out to other people. Next, we've got a very important part of working on a project is how will you communicate? So how will the team work together? And what decisions need to be made? How will those decisions get made? Will you be voting on things? How will you decide when there's a tie? Will there be a tie-breaking mechanism? And also what infrastructure is needed? Do you need to be able to speak to each other by Skype or by video conferencing? Or do you need to be able to send and receive post or faxes or something like this? And then lastly, and probably most importantly, is the sense of contingency. So this is your B plan. These are where you gather together extra resources for unforeseen changes. So no matter how hard you work on planning a project, there are things that will shift and change. Some things will become more expensive or more difficult to find. And so for that reason, you should always plan in a level of contingency within your budget and within your resources. So the steps towards project planning and project management that you're going to need to work out at the very start of your project are identifying the stakeholders, identifying the sponsors, working out those aims and objectives and how they fulfill both the mission of the stakeholders and the sponsors, working out very clearly what those outcomes or those deliverables are, the timescales and the milestones, and then the budget and the resources that you'll need to complete the project successfully.